just to see. It's filming. All right. Hello and welcome to everyone. Today we got the coaching legend of MMA. It's Coach Marc Montoya. Can you please put a brief introduction, talk a few sentences about yourself so we can continue?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Obviously, I'm the head coach and owner of Factory X here in Inglewood, Colorado, and have had the opportunity to train many MMA fighters and a bunch of UFC fighters, and just it's a pleasure to be on. So thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting to be my guest. Every beginning is super hard, I guess. So when you kicked off, it was probably very, very hard. So can you please talk about your early phase of your coaching career?
Yeah, when we started Factory X as a business, it was about 10 years ago. And so, when we started that, it was purely just out of passion, just like it is today. It's something that I've always loved doing and enjoyed training in mixed martial arts personally. I still do that every single day. And I was given a gift to coach people and help them become and see what sometimes they don't know is even there, and that's that greatness inside of them. And so, starting this journey of mixed martial arts, I boxed and wrestled as a kid, and then I played team sports through college, and then mixed martial arts has always just been I've always been drawn to it. So it drew me back in, and I was in '98. I started training in Muay Thai kickboxing and fell in love with it, and then of course evolved into MMA and as a fighter and as a coach now. And so that's something that that journey and process has been amazing. It's been something that I love, and even right now with us having to have the gym shut down and all the stuff because of the coronavirus. I know how much I love it because I miss it every single day, and can't wait to get back on the mats with our students and our athletes.
You mentioned UFC fighters. I know a lot of them, but I guess many of people don't. So, who are the most famous students you've trained? That's question one. And question two. You develop very, very close relationship with your fighters, and they sometimes see you not as a coach only, if you know what I mean. So, can you please answer these two questions? Thank you.
Yeah, so the UFC fighters I've trained, it's been a amazing list of athletes. I had the opportunity at the beginning. Chris Camozzi and I, that was my first UFC fighter ever. He's someone that I've trained for most of his career. He still trains with me now. He's no longer in the UFC, but he was the first UFC fighter that I actually coached. And Chris and I went on and had 20 plus fights together in the UFC, and then there's been a ton after him. He was my first and the trailblazer for me as a coach. But after him, I've trained many UFC athletes. From Nate Marquardt is someone that I trained that a lot of people would know. Of course, Joe Warren is not in the UFC. He was in Bellator, but Joe Warren and I won 3 world titles together in Bellator. And so you can't not mention Joe Warren because just of his savagery, but also just the immense talent that he is and what he has done for me as a coach. Joe Warren is someone that I was just fond about and love to go into battle with. And so Joe Warren is somebody, and he was obviously the first world titles I've ever won as a coach. And so 3 of them with Joe was an amazing run. And then after that, it was developmental time. It was time for us to develop kids and to go into the UFC. And some of the guys that I've trained along the way have been like James Krause, for example, is one of those kids that came to me 5-6 years ago and was he would win one, lose one type thing, and we have gone on to do great things together. We won 6 in a row. He just took a fight on 18 hours notice against Trevor Giles recently, and so James Krause is another guy. Zach Cummings is another one. Of course, Anthony Smith is very well known. People know Anthony Smith for whom he is, and fighting in the title fight against John Jones, and then finishing Gustafsson, one of the best 205ers ever, to see the UFC octagon just recently in Stockholm. Anthony did that, and is soon to fight Glover Teixeira here hopefully soon. And then, kids that we've developed, kids like Ian Heinisch, who started with us from the very, very, very beginning, never set foot in the cage. We trained, and he is in the UFC. Macy Barber is another one of those developmental kids. Yusuf Zalal is a kid that I've had since he was in his teens, and he is in the UFC. And Chris Gutierrez and Jonathan Martinez both have come from Texas to train with us. And Court McGee is an amazing talent that we've had the opportunity to train, and is a veteran of the sport and been an amazing guy. Dustin Jacoby is another UFC fighter and Glory kickboxer, and fought for the world title twice in Glory kickboxing. So those are just a few of the people. There's still other UFC athletes that I've trained, and had the opportunity to be in their corner. But those are just a few that come to mind.
All right. So one question. I've noticed when you're during the fight, when it's between the rounds, even when the fighter is psychologically, physically, mentally rocked, you are able to recover him between the rounds. To be honest, to me it looks like some kind of a magic. Don't get it wrong, but it's very hard to recover a fighter so quickly. But you do that. How do you do that? I mean, the next round they look completely differently, like they woke up.
Yeah, it depends on the fighter, to be honest with you. It depends on situation, and I think a lot of it comes down to just, us training together and me understanding their personality and me understanding what makes them tick. Some guys I can't yell at in the corner because it shuts them down, and some guys I need to yell at in the corner because that gets them up. A lot of times there's a process, just like the guys practice, we practice as coaches on a daily basis of how to coach these guys and get better at it. And so, helping them recover mentally and physically is always the goal in the short time we have in the corner between rounds. And that's something that we get to practice, or we should practice daily. And that's what we do as a coaching staff. So I think ultimately when you ask that question, how do we do that? The how is because, I get to know my fighters as much as they'll allow me to get to know them, and on a personal and a professional relationship. But understanding what makes them tick is how we can help them be better in between rounds and then into the next round. And so that all comes down to just practice and being in this thing together on a daily basis before we ever even step foot into the cage.
So I guess your gym and your way of coaching are based on individual approach. That's one. And the second, I guess, you build a team spirit, a team chemistry, which is pretty much strong. I guess that's it, right?
Yeah, the team camaraderie is the key. This is technically an individual sport. They get in there on their own only, but they would never get there without an amazing team around them, whether it's from the athletes they get to train with on a daily basis or the coaches that they get to train with. And on top of that, they're a team that they have surrounding them, like their friends and family and their management groups and those type of things. That small team that they have around them, there has to be camaraderie there. And inside the actual Factory X team, that's something I've always culturally developed and wanted to develop. Is I wanted to have a strong team presence, and that it wasn't just about them only. And so when guys don't have a fight on the board, I still want them training. I want them training to develop their own skills. I want them to train to help the next guy or girl coming up with their fight, just like they did them. And that stuff's really important to me when it comes to building a strong unit and a strong team. It's one thing to be selfish. It's another thing to be selfless. And so you have to have both of those. And as fighters, that's tough because that has to be learned, and that has to be coached, and that has to be developed, because ultimately fighting is a very selfish sport. and I understand why, but I also don't approve of it being a selfish sport, because it can't be. It's got to be. We're a team, and we win and lose together, and that's what this is about. And so from the losing, we have to learn, and from the learning, we're able to grow, and from the growth, we're able to get to coach and be surrounded with all the athletes that we get to have around us on a daily basis.
Well, now I get why people mostly call you one of the greatest MMA minds. It's definitely an open-minded approach and a great individual approach to the fighters, which is awesome, just awesome. And you coached many fighters, you were in many matches, you were in many fights. This is tough question. Which was the most emotional fight of your career? But the fight of your fighter. I hope you know what I mean. Like for example, the toughest stress, the greatest level of stress as a coach. Which was that fight? Do you have that fight?
Are you asking which fight as a coach that I've been in was the most stressful, or are you asking
Stressful,
which is
emotional. You know, the toughest
emotional?
fight for you from mental aspect as a coach.
Man, it's really hard to pinpoint one, because I think all of them are have their own challenges, and it's funny because a few fights come to mind. The anytime one of the women fight, it always gives me extra stress and anxiety. I don't know why, but it does. And so anytime I have a woman fight, there's a little bit of extra stress. I'm not sure why that is, but if I'm being truthful, that's always been one of those things. When kids make their pro debut, that's a interesting time, because you're taking them from an amateur to a pro. That's interesting. When kids make their amateur debut, that's another interesting time, because they don't hear a word you're saying. It's a 3-minute round. They're out there just working strictly on fear and instinct, and that's obviously an interesting time. Their UFC debut is always a very emotional time, on the plus side, not a negative side, but on the plus side. It's cool to see them finally get there and experience what they've been dreaming about. And but like I always coach the athletes, it's not about us getting to the UFC. It's about you remaining and staying there and building a career there, living there for years and years on end. That's the hard part. Getting there is hard, but staying there is much harder. So seeing their UFC debuts is an amazingly emotional time. Anytime I've been in a world title fight, whether it's been in Bellator or Glory Kickboxing or the UFC, those are very emotional times in a good way as well, because you're at the pinnacle of what you're trying to do, and you're sitting there going, wow, this is what we have been working so hard for. And I've won world titles, and I've lost world titles as a coach, and they're amazing highs and some of the lowest lows I've ever experienced. And so those are examples of times of when things can be stressful and really fun. It's not just about the negative stress of it, because part of the reason that you're feeling those feelings is because there's opportunity that you've been working for, and opportunity, it creates a lot of greatness, and it also creates some doubt. Sometimes it creates fear. And so those are things that are great to go through. And the cool part about what I get to do and what the fighters get to do is you get put in front of all those emotions, and how you manage and navigate those emotions really dictates what the outcome of that fight and your future looks like. And that's a cool thing to do. And it's not just about the winning. It's also about all the learning and the growing and learning how to navigate through that stuff. Because let's be honest, as a fighter, your career is going to be very short in comparison to life. So hopefully the skills you're learning on the mat, in the cage, they're able to take and develop into their life, into their children's life, their spouse's life, and they're able to carry those on for not just them, but generations to come. And that's a huge impact that I don't think they see present day. And I know it'll be there for them and their families and generations to come if they'll they'll just absorb that information and take what they're learning from all the opportunities that are put in front of them, whether it's scary, fun, or a mixture of both. Those are things that I think are really cool to see, and the emotional side of all of it is growth.
Would you like to add something? Maybe greet someone, maybe say something we didn't mention.
Say that one more time, sorry.
Would you please like to add something? Maybe something we didn't say, maybe we missed something. Would you like to say something else, to add something to this conversation?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Keep doing the great work. You're taking advantage of opportunity right now. People are available because of the coronavirus. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity and the platform. Also, thank you to all the just doctors and nurses and people out there that are helping all of us in this trying time. One thing I would say is it's important right now to just live day to day. It's important to enjoy today, because as we all know, stuff can be taken away quickly, and a lot of it's out of our control. But what we can't control is our energy and attitude. And I would say continue to have great energy and a great attitude, even when you're feeling down. I mean, the down times are times for you to come up and realize that you're still blessed, you're still breathing, and we're able to do what we do, and that's called life. And the cool part about all this is that it's made us all pump the brakes a little bit and look around and realize what's most important to us. And I think family is something that is super important, and it's also to be cherished. And so, just want to thank my family for always giving me the support, and my team the support that allows us all to get to do this. And so for all the families out there that are supporting fighters and coaches and those type of things, just want to say thank you to them, and continue to stay in the fight, and just find opportunity. Even when we're given lemons, let's make lemonade.
Great, thank you so much for this interview. I will post it next week, as we currently have travel restrictions, and they will remove travel restrictions on Monday, so I will post it next week, just to know.
Awesome. Make sure you tag us so we can share it with everybody and promote you, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, no problem. I will tag you. I will send you via Instagram, so no worries. Thank you for accepting this.
Awesome.
Have a great day, Mark.
You too. I appreciate it. Thank you.